Schulz Saves America is listed as a stand-up comedy special on Netflix, and it's not that. It's more like a comedy moment. It's not a traditional stand-up special. It's a social commentary, and it's a 4-part miniseries, if you will, of this social commentary, which is a look back on 2020. It's by comedian and podcaster Andrew Schulz, co-host of the Brilliant Idiots podcast with Charlamagne the God, as well as the Flagrant 2 podcast with Akash Singh. And very apropos to Andrew Schulz, this series originated on YouTube. So he was one of the comics that... Actually, let me take a step back real quick. Originally, for those of you who are not familiar, Andrew Schulz is a comic in New York. He had a comedy special, shopped it around to the major networks. They all turned him down. And he took the strategy of, fuck it, we created this ourselves, we shot it ourselves. I'm going to put it out on YouTube for free. And it was a great special, blew up. He gained a shitload of popularity. Then he doubled down and did it again with a follow-up crowd work special. That blew up as well. Then after that, the Netflixes, Amazons, etc. came knocking and, were all too willing to now put him on. But he was like, nah, now the price is way different. Like, I'm not accepting the deal I was shopping around for before. Clearly you guys saw the value of the work I was putting out, etc. And he's largely attributed to creating this avenue for comics that don't get the traditional Netflix, HBO, Amazon, Comedy Central, to a lesser extent, special. And what he did is put out his specials out for free in chunks with captions. And he did that in 15-minute increments every Friday, I believe it was, for a week. For a month. And then at the end of that, 15-minute increment, 4-week process, you had the full special available online for free. And he also put up clips on Instagram. And since it has become a very profitable model and option for comics that don't get their Netflix or Amazon special straight off the bat. And a bunch of comics have followed suit since, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Following like the same format, which is pretty dope and a testament to him. So one thing that he was a proponent of during the pandemic was to hunker down and use this time as kind of like a gift to pour yourself into your creative endeavor, because you're kind of like forced into this creative quote unquote prison because you don't have the option of going out and doing as many things as before, and you no longer have to commute to and from work in most cases, etc. So a lot of the excuses that one would use in the past, you don't have that anymore. So he, along with Mark Gagnon, which is a co-host of the Flagrant 2 podcast, they co-created this show for YouTube and, actually mainly for Instagram, but it was also released on YouTube, called, I'm not sure if this is what they called it, but it was like a catchy thing of, hey, turn your phone. Because on Instagram, if you turn your phone to the side, it doesn't do like that orientation flipping thing that most other like apps do. So that in and of itself was like a cool thing to do on Instagram, which nobody else had done before. And it was just this like social commentary on a specific topic that was going on in like current events. That gained a shitload of popularity. He put out, I think, like 4 or 5 of those. And then Netflix came with the bag, apparently, because they made him an offer that obviously they accepted. And they put together this 4-part special called Schulz Saves America. And here are the 4 topics. Again, it's a look back on things that happened in this year, 2020. The first one is a 17-minute video called Coronavirus, the Pandemic Unmasked, Our Pitiful Politicians. The second one is a 17-minute video titled Conspiracy Theories, Predators, Presidents, and Epstein's quote-unquote suicide. The third video is a 16-minute video titled Black Lives Matter, Protests, Police, and the Hollywood Hypocrites. And the fourth video is an 18-minute video titled A Nation Divided. Crybaby Cooper, and he's referring to Anderson Cooper, and Tantrum Tucker, he's referring to Tucker Carlson, are tearing the country in two. And in this series, it's a deep dive social commentary on each of those topics, which they pull off masterfully, riddled with jokes, and both sides get it. Like, it's not just shitting on the left, it's not just shitting on the right, it's on just the hypocrisy of both sides, which is also refreshing. And it's like delivered at a rapid rate, joke after joke, bar after bar, point after point, back to back to back to back to back. And then on top of that, there's an additional layer where, you know, it's him just sitting down in a chair, but behind him he has like the green screen, like images and stuff like that. And then each of those images correspond to something that's being said. And not just those two things, the actual text, or the closed captioning, if you will, also plays into the entire thing as like a third layer of jokes. So some, like, one sentence could have like 3 jokes within it. Not just what he says verbally, but coupled with the imagery that you see behind them, and then the tertiary thing of the text. It's super dope, genius. It did not disappoint by any stretch. I loved the YouTube clips. I actually featured a few of them in my weekly newsletter as a video of the week, spuntoday.com/subscribe. And I was hoping that it was going to be more the same or even edgier when it got to Netflix and not like watered down. And it definitely did not disappoint. And if you're a fan of like any of the podcasts and you listen to like a bit more of how the sausage was made, you know that according to them, like, Netflix had close to 0 notes on the product that they delivered to them. I think he referenced there was like one joke. I forget which one it was, but it was like a side throwaway joke. Like they mentioned the name of someone, and Netflix's legal team said technically we can't use that person's name unless you can prove that they're a prostitute, which technically you can because it's like an illegal activity or something like that, because then it would infringe on that person's ability to make money and then they could get sued, some shit like that. But it was literally the only note that was given to them, which from a creator's perspective is like amazing to hear. So kudos to Netflix for letting creators do what they do, especially in this PC culture world, which can get exhausting, especially when often those are the folks that need to hear things like this the most. And then the dopest thing of all is that they created it. It's like the same crew that does the podcast created this. From Al directing it, having his directorial debut. Al is like one of the producers on the podcast on Flagrant 2. And like shoots Schulz's specials, like the specials that I referenced that were put up on YouTube and stuff like that. And his official quote-unquote directorial debut was on Netflix, which is dope. And like they were cracking on him like on the podcast saying like he had to learn. He uses like Final Cut Pro to cut like YouTube videos and stuff like that, which I've used before personally for the Spun Today podcast. But with Netflix, it had to be on Premiere, which is like a different software program. So they were like cracking on him saying that he was like directing and cutting the videos together to deliver to Netflix, but he was like on one screen doing the editing, and then on the other screen he had like a YouTube of like, how do I move this to there on Premiere? Which is also like funny but also refreshing to hear, because that's like the same shit that I do. For example, like when I'm using like a program that I don't know how to use, or when I want to look something up on Scrivener on how to use like a specific functionality, or like on Photoshop or whatever, you know? So that was funny. But yeah, man, definitely check it out. It's called Schulz Saves America and is streaming now on Netflix. It's probably one of my favorite things that I watched last year.